So today we are making oak-aged mead. Yes, this is our second mead inspired from the Harry Potter's franchise. It is not an official recipe. It is, once again, my homage or my interpretation of what that recipe would be. Now, let's start with something really simple. They mention oak-aged mead quite a lot within the books and the movies. They don't really give very good descriptions of it as far as flavor profiles and anything like that, so there's a lot of wiggle room there. However, we do know that it has a slight taste of licorice and a slight taste of cherry. So I'm going to take that as this is going to be a cherry metheglin mead. Alright, so for starters, we're going to need a scale and a fermenter, which is going to be right here. That was easy. Now I want to take the scale and make sure it is zeroed out. Put my sanitized fermenter right on top. Grab my honey, and I'm going to give about 3 pounds. And that's all we're going to need the scale for today. So that can go away. Next I want to add just a little bit of water. That'll do. Now you want to use water that's closer to room temperature. Like, you don't want to use hot water because you don't want to cook the honey. But you don't want to use ice cold water because it will never mix. This recipe has a lot of mixing in it. At this point, I'm going to add the hot tea. This is 1 cup of tea with 2 tea bags that I let steep for about maybe 20 minutes. This is not going to give any flavor to our mead. What it's going to do is give that tanniny feel, that mouth feel that people find pleasant in wines, that like puckering cheek sensation. Be careful because I don't want to add the tea bags. But that little bit of extra heat in this volume isn't going to cook the honey, but it really might just warm it up a little bit more and help us mix it through. A quick little side note. I'm not mixing it through because I need it to be fully mixed. We're adding yeast to this and fermenting it. Everything will get incorporated that's in this fermenter. We are, however, going to be taking readings along the way, and if I don't mix this well, my reading isn't going to be accurate, which means I'm not really going to know how much gravity the yeast ate of this brew. I'm not going to know when it's truly done, and I'm not going to have any idea of what the actual ABV is, since all of that stuff really depends on the hydrometer being accurate. We'll get it back into the hydrometer in just a couple minutes. Once you're confident that it's about as mixed up as it's going to get, we can add some more ingredients. I'm going to add 2 pounds of frozen and defrosted dark cherries. Get all of the juices. You paid for them. You want the flavor in the mead. If it's still in the bowl, it's not going to be in the mead, and it kind of defeats the purpose. Next, as far as the licorice flavor goes, I'm going to add about 4 star anise pods. And I'm going to add another maybe teaspoon or 2 of allspice berries. Because it's a metheglin, I want to have a couple of notes of the spice, and that will do it. You can go for a little bit less star anise. It's kind of a strong spice. And normally I only add 1 or 2. Today I added a little bit more because I want to have a pronounced licorice flavor in the end result, which is why I did it that way. If you don't love licorice, maybe cut back a little bit. You want to have some, because it's going to complement the mead and make it taste the way you want it to taste. But you don't have to have quite as much if you don't like it. I'm also at this stage going to add a little fermento. That's going to be our yeast nutrient. That really is going to help the yeast build up a good colony and get through all of the sugars you want them to. Just following the package instructions. And because there are cherries, I'm going to add a little bit of pectic enzyme. This is going to help break down a little bit more of the essence of the cherries and help them clear out at the end. So just, it's a good adjunct to add. If you don't have fermento and you don't have pectic enzyme, they can be skipped, but the results may vary as a result. I'm now going to add some oak chips. I'm going to add oak chips in primary and then again in secondary because I don't want this to age for a year before I get a really nice pronounced oak flavor to it. I want to start extracting them now. Now, this is just run-of-the-mill oak chips. I have about 1.5 cups worth, if I'm pressed, and I toasted them for about 20 minutes. So they have a nice, almost like campfire type of smell to them right now, but they're going to add a lot of flavor to this. And it's going to go a lot quicker if I add them now. And because they're chopped up and they're going to be floated around in solution, the yeast, the ingredients all have a lot of time to mix and mingle, where in typical oak aging, you have them in an oak cask, and throughout the seasons, the wood expands and contracts, and that causes the different alcohol in it to go in and come back out and extract the flavor that way. So, is this going to be the exact replica of that? No. But is it going to be good enough? I think so. That's going to go right into the fermenter. Those are not going to add any sugars or any fermentable anything. They're just strictly there for flavor, and that's okay. And our last ingredient, why not? I have the peel of 1 orange. Now, if you follow my videos, I usually use dried orange peel because I have quite a lot of it. However, in this particular case for this brew, if someone's trying this for the first time, I want them to have the confidence that they could just go get an orange and peel the outside. Now, we're only taking the actual orange peel. That white part, the pith, I'm trying to keep that out. Now we have this nice murky concoction. Let's go ahead and give that another big stir. And so, unfortunately, upon editing, I realized that my mic gave out around this point. So, to finish it off, what I did was filled it to water to about here. I then stirred it all together really well. And then I took a hydrometer reading. Now, you need to take a hydrometer reading. This reading is probably more important than any of the measurements I used. And the reasoning is I know I'm starting out at a 1.110. That's a lot of information. I know that if it goes to completely dry, 0, 1.000, or even lower, it's going to be at least this for ABV, which is important because I have to use a yeast that can get to that tolerance. If my target was 1.110 and I take that hydrometer reading and it is a 1.195 whatever, I know I need to add more water, which I have plenty of room for, to dilute it. I know if I take the reading and it is a 1.090, I might need to add more honey to increase the gravity reading. Those are super important details that just cannot be overlooked when making a mead, a wine, a beer. The ABV, it helps. You know how much alcohol you have. You'll know how much your yeast is eating it. You'll know where it is during the fermentation process. If it stalls, if it gets stuck, if something else happens, you have insurance against it. So the yeast I added was Lalvin 71B, which is a personal favorite of mine. And I know it goes up to 16% ABV. So this should be covered no problem. It will probably even claw a little bit higher than that under the right circumstances, which it's starting to warm up around the area where I live. So this might go a little bit faster or be able to go a little bit higher. The last thing I did was I took a piece of painter's tape because it's a brewer's best friend, and I wrote some notes. I wrote today's date, I wrote the gravity, I wrote the name of it, and you could add a lot of other information right to this. This way, in 2 weeks from now, when I'm trying to figure out which brews need to be worked on today, this tape will tell me the date and the original gravity, and I'll be able to look at that and say, yes, I definitely did that. You can also add notes like added extra cinnamon or added extra star anise, so that you know when you're looking at your brew where it is exactly at. Now, I also keep a journal with all of the ingredients I used in each brew, And that should be done every brew as well. Because if you try something and it is the best thing you've ever brewed, you now have the full recipe to copy and make it again. Or if you try a brew you just made and you're like, this was great, but it just needed A, B, or C, you have the recipe and you can now adjust and add or take away whatever you might need to do. But what's next for this? It's going to sit, it's going to ferment, might take a couple of weeks. And at that point, I will make another video to show you guys what the next steps to this wonderful brew are. But that's all I have for today. If you like this video, please give me a like. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns on anything I might have missed, go ahead and give them to me. If you want to see part 2 and see how our oak aged mead comes out, hit subscribe. This way you'll be notified the second it happens. But that's all I have for today, guys. I'm Phil. This is Phil with Facts. And until next time, cheers.